Welcome to Revolution Against Evolution. I'm your host, Doug Sharp, and today I have Sue Langham with me as a guest host, and we're going to talk a little bit about creation destinations. These are some of the places that I have visited, and I think Sue is going to, she's visited a few of these, but we're going to also talk a little bit about how to get to some of these places and to why you would want to make a trip and to investigate God's creation and learn about where you can actually find some of the things that people have talked about on this TV program. So Sue, I know that you and I went to the Creation Museum in the Ark Encounter a number of years ago.
Yes, and it was fantastic. I would highly recommend that everybody in the United States and people from other countries attend both of these locations as a primary visitation area. They have a variety of activities. They have animals for children. They have a lot of displays for all age groups, and well done. The artistic craftiness of everything in the building they've done is amazing. The Ark is done to scale. They have videos. They have what appears to be dramas and skits done. It's just amazing. And even the food is wonderful. Made in Kentucky, and it's an amazing buffet. So I strongly recommend make this a priority vacation site for your entire family. And if you're by yourself, it's a great location to go even by yourself. And they also have guest speakers at different locations in there where you could hear a presentation on different topics. And an amazing bookstore where if you want to take something home, you want to have it as a collector's item or as a gift for Christmas or birthdays, wonderful ideas there, wonderful.
Yeah, the Creation Museum is located in Cincinnati, Ohio, or actually outside of Cincinnati. If you take the loop around through Indiana into just into Kentucky as you exit Indiana, it's right at that particular spot. And I remember when this was starting, probably around about 2002, 2003, when they started talking about building this, that they had their offices there in Florence, Kentucky, and they had a lot of the different things that they were building for it in their offices there. And there's a fellow who actually builds the dinosaur models, and it's Buddy Davis is his name. And he was a really talented artist.
Oh, wow. And
so I remember going to that and seeing the construction site. Oh. And it was pretty amazing watching this facility go up.
Oh, wow, that would be amazing. And some of the people that actually donated and have their names on the planks that were putting up the Ark, that was amazing. Right. To go in there and to see your relatives or your friends that had donated to help build that is just pretty impressive. And you're right, I was impressed with the artwork.
And nearby, it's about 45 minutes drive south from the Creation Museum is the Ark Encounter. And that's a totally different kind of museum.
And that's where I was referring to the planks. We're actually at the Ark Encounter because I think of it as being a wonderful 2-day trip, have an overnight in the middle, and that way you can get a full day at the Creation Museum and a full day at the Ark Encounter. And it's located in northern Kentucky, so if you're coming from down south, I would think I-75 is probably a good way to get there. And if you're coming from Michigan or up north, depending where you're coming from in the Midwest, you could get there and just cross into Cincinnati, across the border, and get into Kentucky and see it. And it's a very nice trip. We had no difficulty, I don't think we did when we traveled.
Yeah, it was pretty nice. The Ark Encounter is a full-scale model of a Noah's Ark. One thing that I thought was very impressive about the Ark Encounter was the way it was laid out. It was very accessible to all ages, even if you're have physical disabilities.
Good point.
And you have to use a walker or a wheelchair. They have all that accessible so that anyone who has that disability can still enjoy the Ark and not have any problems. And so, but what the whole theme of both of these museums are taking the Bible from its very first verse as straightforward text that you can believe in and trust as God's Word. And
meaning God created the heavens and the earth, and then it goes from there?
that's right. And in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and then it goes right down one day at a time. And you have all 7 days, with the 7th day being the day of rest. And it's a straightforward reading of God's Word that you're taking a look at, because if you believe in the 10 Commandments, it talks about the Sabbath day, and it says in 6 days God created the heavens and the earth, and then the 7th day He rested. And so it compares that with the days of the week. And so we know that what the days of creation were 7 literal days.
Wow.
And so it's something that both the Creation Museum and Ark Encounter demonstrates as being an answer to the theory of evolution. And that is something that I think is very unique about these 2 particular museums.
Well, I noticed that you've been to a number of places that you recommend as creation destinations.
Yeah.
In your opinion, would you say the Creation Museum and the Ark Encounter would be your top choice? Or are there other places that you would say might be comparable, or you might even favor over the Ark Encounter and the Creation Museum?
I remember even before the Creation Museum was built, in Santee, California, was where the Institute for Creation had their museum, and that
was that the ICR?
ICR, yes.
The Institute of Creation Research?
And
that was in San Diego?
Yeah, it's called the Museum of Creation and Earth History.
Where is it now?
It's in Santee.
Okay.
And so
Santee,
California.
California. Okay. I'm a Michigandanian. I'm sorry. I've had limited visitation to California.
Santee is east of San Diego.
Okay, so it's not too far.
So it's in the foothills of the mountains, and it's
okay.
It's quite a nice little drive. It's quite a bit smaller than the Creation Museum in Cincinnati.
But wouldn't it be a great location if you're living in California in the southern part?
Exactly.
It would be an easy trip. It wouldn't be something like you'd have to fly across the nation to get to Kentucky.
Right.
And then you would get some good things in that. What are the highlights of the ICR, of the center that you're talking about?
Well, they had quite a bit of archaeology, which was very interesting. They had a collection of a lot of different archaeological artifacts from Jerusalem and from Israel, and so one thing I remember that they had was a peck measure. It was a measure that they would scoop the grain out with, but it doubled as a lampstand. And so you could and when Jesus was talking about let your light so shine before men, it was all about this particular thing.
Amazing.
Because then you could hide the light under a bushel. The bushel was this little measure that they talked about, and so you actually put your candle on top, but if you put it underneath there, then it wouldn't shine very well.
Oh,
and so
that would make sense.
Jesus was talking about.
Yes.
I remember that particular one from that particular museum. Now, Institute for Creation Research has moved to Dallas.
Oh, how long ago did they move to Dallas?
It's been maybe 10 years.
10 years?
They went to Dallas, and now they've built the Icr Discovery Center, which is just opened. It's going to be a destination that I'm going to want to go to sometime.
Okay.
I've actually been there.
You have been there?
I have, but I've been to that particular facility before they opened up the museum.
Oh, okay. Are you familiar then with what their emphasis is? What are they emphasizing? What are the highlights? What type of people would be most interested in going to the Icr Discovery Center?
I think it's going to be quite a bit similar experience to the Creation Museum.
Okay, so for families or
Right.
singles, any variety of
Right.
people would be interested in that.
One thing I remembered from my visit there before is that they had an incredible collection of fossils.
Ah,
And for example, there was one fossil of a kind of fish eating another fish, and that was buried quickly in that position.
oh wow.
And so it shows that the flood model shows that there was a quick burial of all these different fossils. And it makes sense that the flood model talks about how everything was buried in this flood of Noah, and things. Otherwise, if it goes to the bottom of the ocean, and it'll deteriorate, and you won't have a fossil.
Well, what if you didn't live in California or near Kentucky? Would there be something up maybe in the northwest part of the nation? Perhaps isn't there one in Glendive, Montana, that also deals with dinosaurs and fossils?
Well, you really have to purpose in your heart to go there.
Really?
But Glendive, Montana, is way out in the plains. It's just beyond North Dakota.
Okay.
And so, but the thing about that place is that it is a real active dinosaur dig.
Ah,
And
wow.
so you can actually go out and dig for dinosaur fossils. And this is a spot where they actually found a Triceratops horn and found soft tissue in it.
Oh my gosh.
And so the soft tissue is really the creationist ace in the hole, because it tells you that this is something that couldn't be millions of years old, but it was something that actually died relatively recently. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been able to preserve these. It's actually whole cells that you can see in the Triceratops horn.
Oh my gosh.
So they were able to. There's a fellow, his name is Mark Armitage, who is actually working on this project to catalog all these different instances of dinosaur soft tissue. And there's other researchers who have found soft tissue, and it doesn't fit their model, but they can't. They have to figure out, well, how did that come about? Well, maybe it could have lasted that long, millions of years. This demonstrates that how those preservations can occur, and so that's begging the question, and that type of thing.
So, also in that neck of the woods, isn't there a Mount St. Helens Creation Information Center?
Yeah.
Seeing that was a major event that happened in the nation.
Right.
So would that be a good recommendation also for people to
Yeah,
go
that's
to
a
in the
much
area?
smaller museum. It's
Okay.
relatively new, but it does give the model of catastrophism, because it tells you what happened to Mount St. Helens, and how it really demonstrates that it would have. It's a good model for what happened during the flood, because a canyon in just a day was carved out 1/40th the size of the Grand Canyon.
Wow.
And so we were able to document that and to see how that really worked.
Well, I also noticed there seems to be a number of places in Florida. I noticed there's a Creation Studies Institute. Isn't that in Deerfield Beach, Florida?
Yeah,
and
that's,
International Association for Creation is in Orlando.
Right.
And there may even be another one that I'm missing. What do you think about those sites? Seeing a lot of people go to Florida, even from the Midwest, plus you have people down that live near Florida or in Florida.
Yeah, Tom DeRosa is the guy who runs this Creation Discovery Museum, and this is in Deerfield Beach, Florida, which is near Fort Lauderdale.
Okay.
And so it's down a ways. There's another one in Arcadia, Florida, and that one is Gary Parker's museum. And one of the things about these Florida museums is that there's a lot of examples of mammoths and what you would call Ice Age creatures being in that particular as part of Florida. And you wouldn't think of Ice Age being in Florida.
No, not at all.
But it's interesting that you find these huge mammoth fossils and you get the picture of Ice Age being Michigan or Canada or up there in the Arctic or in Siberia. They find a lot of, but the mammoths and the mastodons were actually warm climate creatures. And what it shows is that since they were in Florida and in Siberia and in Michigan, and that the post-flood world would have been probably warm. Still, they had a warm climate, and that's because of the warm oceans. The warm oceans after the flood would have caused a weather effect, where it would pile up snow in the interior. But you would also have pockets of fairly temperate areas, such as around the coast. So this is why you find the mastodon and mammoth fossils, and actually dinosaur fossils, up near the Arctic. And then they were actually buried quickly in some catastrophe, and so you can see that like the one they actually have somewhere the flesh was still on these fossils. They were quickly frozen and buried in sediment, and so. But Tom DeRosa has a nice little museum down there. It's part of a Bible college, and it's well worth taking a visit.
Wow.
And the International Association for Creation is actually an organization in Orlando where it links together a lot of different creation ministries. And what their idea is not necessarily to have their own ministry themselves or their own museum, but they train people like us to go into secular museums and like in the Smithsonian and give tours, creation tours in secular museums. Now that's kind of a neat little thing, and the guy who's running is just a young guy, Stephen Craig Policastro, and he has really got a vision for bringing about a way to give tours of different museums, and I appreciate his vision, and he also wants each of these different ministries to work together and not be rival. There's been some problems in the past where one ministry sort of gets in competition with another ministry, and then they sort of have a little split, and it's not a good thing. It's sort of like some of the things that happen in denominations and in churches, and so. But I think that his vision for uniting the creation ministries is a great one, and
that's a good idea. I did notice there's a couple, like, what about in Idaho? Isn't there in Nampa, Idaho, a Northwest Science Museum for people that are in the middle, well, not middle, but not quite in the area?
Yeah, it's in the Boise area. I don't know much about that one. I just actually found it. I think it has something to do with Creation Moments ministry.
Okay.
But it's brand new, and I think, and then there's a few in Texas.
Yeah, and isn't there a Mount Blanco Fossil Museum?
Yeah, that's
Where's that located?
That's in Crosbytown, Texas. It's,
Okay.
It's in good fossil country, but you have to purpose in your heart to get there because it's
Okay.
somewhere between Dallas and Lubbock,
Oh, okay.
and so it's out in the middle of
Okay.
Texas wilderness.
And then isn't there in Ohio, Akron Fossils and Science Center? So in
Yeah,
case you're an Ohioan, and you know, that's not too far, it sounds like, relative to the other places, to the Kentucky museums.
Yeah,
But-
I was at that one, and it's a smaller museum, but it's a good one. They have a lot of good things, and they have programs for kids.
Oh, excellent.
It's a very good museum
children.
for children, and they
Excellent
have
museum for children.
actually a outdoor area where they do certain experiments and things of that sort. So.
Great. Do you have any recommendations for, like, in Canada, perhaps? Is there, for the Canadians, that they might want to
Yeah.
visit?
Okay.
Or those of us in, you know, that want to move and go up north for a little bit for
Yeah.
vacation?
Well,
What about-
there's a special area in Alberta.
In Alberta? Okay.
Which is it's called the Drumheller fossil beds, and it's near Red Deer, Alberta, and so that one is quite a distance from here. Okay, but if you're going to do the Canadian Rockies, that would be an excellent stopover.
Sounds great. Then
And-
maybe do some skiing on the side if you go in the
Yeah.
winter, go down the Rocky Mountains.
But the Big Valley Creation Museum, our friend Ian Juby had a lot to do with starting that one up.
Oh, really?
And he has his own TV show. Actually, we helped him get started with that TV show. He sort of copied us and actually does a much better job than we do, I have to say. He really, and he is funny.
Oh, he has some humor to it. All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I do have, now you've mentioned a lot of creation destinations, which are the museum types primarily. But what about national parks and places of geological interest? Do you have some highlight places that you would recommend people to go to visit?
I do. The one is actually a museum also. It's the Creation Evidence Museum in Texas.
Oh, okay.
And this is in Glen Rose, Texas, and I've been there several times. I think 3 times we've been there. And the feature of this one is that the Paluxy River nearby has dinosaur and human tracks next to each other,
Okay.
and some stepping on each other. And he has in his museum quite a few things to look at in that, but there's a lot of our national parks that have some very excellent demonstrations for creationists.
Okay.
I have in my book Revolution Against Evolution a lot of different places where the fossils and the strata are not in the order in which evolutionists expect. If you find you want to, if you're an evolutionist, to see the fossils in a certain order going from an evolutionary sequence. And if they're not, well then, if you have the older rocks sitting on top of the younger rocks, how can this be? You would have to invent some sort of mechanism to lift a whole section of rocks upward, then shove them over. And in the case of Glacier National Park, this is a out of order set of strata where top layers are Precambrian, which is supposed to be out on the bottom, but then underneath it is Cretaceous rock, which is the age of the dinosaurs. And so to find this out of order strata where you're talking about a section of rock that's 50 miles wide and 350 miles long from north to south. And so that section of the Canadian of the rock is going from Canada down into Montana are out of order, and you can and we've made a trip out there, and you can fly from Lansing to Kalispell, and that's where you would get a rental car, and then you can, we actually had a group of 26 people that went on that
Oh,
trek
wow.
in 2001 or 2002, I think it was. But then we actually went to the spots where the fossils are out of order. And you can actually see this in Trick Falls. There's a place called Trick Falls where
Okay.
it's sometimes in the season the waterfall go over the top, otherwise it come out in a cave. The Grand Canyon is a great spot to go see also, and then there's Red Rock Canyon and Valley of Fire. And these are places where the strata are out of order.
And what about Joggins?
Joggins is in Nova Scotia. And,
Okay. So that's
and-
another trip outside of the country.
yeah, you would
Okay.
be able to see fossil trees growing up that through several layers of strata. And there's
And-
actually 18,000 feet of strata that are tilted. And,
Oh my gosh.
and you can see the fossil trees that went up through them.
Now, a lot of people travel to the Smoky Mountains, so what would be of interest in the Smoky Mountains?
Out of order strata there as well.
Oh, okay.
There's it's about 9 miles and 300 miles long.
Oh, wow.
And so there's of where the Precambrian rock is on a top of Ordovician. And so it's, and if you go to a place called Cades Cove,
Yes, I've been there.
it's what you would call a window. And
Oh,
the window
wow.
is where you have a valley, but you can see all around this window the out of order strata.
Oh my goodness.
And so the mountains on the top are older than the rocks that are underneath it. So how does that work? It really doesn't work very well. And so we like to go find these different places. There's another place, and then if you go to Phoenix, there's a place called South Mountain. And it's
So you could 2 for 1. You go to South Mountain and the Grand Canyon if you
Right,
end
yeah,
up
right.
ending near Phoenix, Arizona, couldn't you?
You could, yes. And so the Grand Canyon has some fossil mix-ups in it too. I document that in my book. And then South Mountain is actually the whole strata, whole geologic column is in question there, because the top is Precambrian and the bottom is Tertiary, which is
Yeah. And isn't there one more, like Empire Mountains? Why would somebody go to the Empire Mountains? What would you
that's a
recommend
little
there?
bit south of Tucson.
Okay.
And the rocks there is out of order, and they're sort of got this kind of contact between them, where it's wavy like that. And so how do you, that complicates the whole problem, because how would it not be sheared off, those old, it's sort of like meshing like a gear, you know. So that's our little tour for today. Thank you for being on my show, Sue. It's really a delight.
Thank you for having me.
We'll see you next time on Revolution Against Evolution.